Welcome to the Beyond the Bestseller podcast. I'm your host, Kelly Schuknecht, and today's guest is Tara Whitney, author of Truly Seen. Welcome, Tara.
Thank you, Kelly. Great to be here.
Let's start out by having you tell us about your book. So, the full title is Truly Seen: Stop Striving to Be Thin and Perfect and Set Yourself Free. I need to have this conversation. So, tell me about this book and why you wrote it.
Yeah, I talk in the book about a time where I was at this business conference that was a women's leadership conference. And it was actually a conference for women accounting leaders because I'm a trained accountant and that's actually the work I'm doing right now, but I can talk about that later. And I was struck by how we were taking the time, probably several hundred people in the room, to acknowledge and celebrate probably like 16 women who, honestly, Kelly, were women that were doing the work and of three people. And I truly wanted to celebrate that. I was like, wow, when does this person sleep? Because she's the best at this, and she's heading up these three sort of volunteer missions in her firm. Clients love her, staff loves her, and she's doing all these other things in her spare time. And I thought, wow, is this the standard that we now have to meet as women leaders? Which is not just being okay, which is not just being like just doing a good job. Like the level of perfection is really unattainable. And so I don't want to give the impression that I don't appreciate or value the contribution that these women are making and have made. It's just there's a price to it. And I thought, how is this conversation different than how we might be talking about male leadership and the
Mhm.
expectation that we have of them? Because as a mom of three kids, and I was really at the height of my accounting career when they were much younger and needed me. It was just much more demanding than now. Here I am. They're young adults living on their own, so it feels very different to me. But so there was that component. And then I just got curious around this because I did notice, and not in a judgmental way, but I thought, wow, not only are they doing all the work of three people, but boy, they look perfect too. They're slim, they're in these meticulous suits, and they just have all the right look to them in their high-heeled shoes and all of that, which there's nothing wrong with that. And then I came across a study that looked at body size and CEOs. And I thought, this myself, that's interesting that someone even decided to study this. So let's just see what this has to say. And basically, the female CEOs, their body size was disproportionately smaller than the average woman. And
Hmm.
male CEOs were disproportionately larger than the average man.
Really? Okay.
Yes. So I thought, well, here I saw something before my own eyes and then to have it validated in a study, and granted, research is research, you take it, there's some value to it, and it's good to know that sometimes you have to go and look a little deeper. But I thought, wow, those are two really big data points that I need to talk about. And that's where the book really started.
Wow. Yeah, that's really interesting to me. For one, I didn't tell you this before we started recording because I didn't know this about you, but I also come from an accounting background. I myself am not an accountant, but I worked in an accounting firm for 7 years as the marketing person. So interesting. And I could visualize what you were talking about. I'm also reading right now. So I had Lois Frankel on my podcast.
Mm.
And she has a book called Nice Girls Don't Get the Corner Office. And
Mm.
after talking with her, I was like, I have to read this book. And so I'm actually reading it right now. And one of the things she talks about is how, so she talks about the title in the podcast episode. She didn't like that title, but that was the what the publisher chose. But she talks about the fact that women tend to, this isn't her words, but be overachievers, right? Like we try to get everything done because like we're rewarded for that. And men have a different approach to their work and their style, whatever. Anyway, it's really interesting, like the things that she talks about, but you're also saying some very similar things to what I'm reading in her book about how it's one woman can do the job of three people and just how they're holding everything together. And so when you wrote this book, what were you trying? So you talked about like the what led you to write it, but what's the like underlying message? What are you teaching people about what you
Sure.
learned is happening?
Yeah, and of course I have my own story and my own experience of living this as well. And at the heart of it, it is that without recognizing that we have these external expectations that we ultimately take in and internalize. So we may like just being in the room of that women's leadership conference, right? So I noticed what maybe no one else really noticed. Like maybe everybody was like, oh, well, this is great. Like that woman's amazing. I love that. Like I'm going to hopefully be like take an emerging, newly promoted manager in an accounting firm. They might be in their mid 20s, right? And they may look on stage and say, oh, I can be like that. That's what I need to do. I need to be like her in order to be successful if I stay in public accounting. And without questioning or challenging those external expectations, then and being caught in it, then what happens is we become a different version of ourselves. And that's where the title comes from, Truly Seen. Because
Mm.
what, for me, what I felt like I had to be a different version of me. Like, I don't want to say it's a fake version or an inauthentic version, but it wasn't the best version of me because I felt that in order for me to show up in a way that felt successful, I had to be thin and perfect. And without challenging those expectations or even just like bringing them out and saying, wait, does this make sense? What is this? Is success really wrapped up in these things for me? If I am not feeling perfect, if I'm not as thin as I'd like to be, or whatever that narrative is that each woman holds around their body, does that mean I'm failing? And recognizing there's a cost, recognizing the power of awareness and questioning these expectations, and then realizing ultimately that we do have a choice. We can say, yeah, I can jump on that train and keep going at it, but what am I losing by doing that?
Mhm.
Or I can choose to get off of that train and decide what success feels is like how I define that success for myself and how do I show up in a true version of me, a more true power empowered version of me, and how to navigate your career that way.
So how do you get to that point? Like how do you let go of that perfectionism? Because I think that I don't even think we're aware of it most of the time. That's what's going on. Like, how do you
Yeah.
become more aware of that and let go of, like, your subtitle is Stop Striving to Be Thin and Perfect and Set Yourself Free. So, like, how do you stop striving for that? Like, how do you stop? It's not stop caring, but like, how do you get in the right mindset around it?
Yeah. I tell the story about how, so as you can see, for those watching us on video, I have curly hair. And early in my career, I used to straighten it because in my mind, women with straight hair were much more put together. They were much more professional. And there was in my mind, they were taken seriously. And I have since, thankfully, due to a really good hairdresser and the right product, which wasn't really available maybe 15 or 20 years ago, I can have my hair the way it is and be like, yeah, it's a little wild, it's a little crazy, but it's me. And so I think it's the start of how much effort do we want to put in to to this level of perfectionism because I don't, I striving for excellence is a really good thing when we do it with intention and we do it with full awareness. But when we're doing it eyes closed, like without questioning some of the choices we make, it can be little things like for women who have children, do you really have to home bake goods to bring to the kids' events, right?
Yes.
Or can it be a different option? Or can you just choose not to do it at all? Like it's all of those things that we keep thinking, if I'm going to be a good mom, I'm going to pack my kids' lunch every day. Or if I'm a really good manager, right? If I'm managing my team really effectively, then I'm going to be available anytime they come to me and ask me a question. That's me being perfect. So, my gosh, Kelly, we could spend the whole week just brainstorming all of those different decision points that people can make around striving to be this certain level of perfection that once you bring awareness and question it, then it becomes, I really like straight hair, it feels really good, I don't mind putting the time in. Like that could be a conscious choice, but when it's not, then that's where I find the price gets really high.
Like focusing on doing things that you want to do or that you
Yeah.
enjoy or whatever, and not the thing. So when you mentioned the home baked, I laugh because the home baked, bringing home baked cookies or whatever, that was a huge struggle for me all of my parenting years, or many of my parenting years, until I finally got to the point of I don't care anymore. But
Yeah.
but I have to say, so my current version of that is I have boys in high school. They play football, and the moms, okay, so I have a question in here, but the moms decide that we're going to do all of these things, right? We have to make them a sign and it has to be a certain thing. We're going to, whatever, they do meals, whatever. And I accepted the fact that, okay, I've always struggled with this as a working mom because I'm like, I don't have time to cook food on a Friday morning to bring it for lunch at noon or whatever time. I was like, how do these women do this? And I don't know if they're stay-at-home moms or if they're just, they work, but I don't know. I've never understood it. But anyway, the sign thing got me this year. And I finally was like, you know what? My boys do not care about this sign and I'm not going to do it. So I
Mm-hmm.
didn't. And there was like this mom's group chat where one of the moms was like listed out the boys who didn't have their signs and they were asking for volunteers from other moms who would do the signs. And I was like, no, no, do not. I don't want anyone making a sign for my kid. I didn't make a sign. I don't care. My kid doesn't care. Do not do it. But I was like, it was such mom guilt because I was like, now I'm the worst mom on the planet because I didn't
Right.
do what everyone else was doing. But I had consciously made that decision that I am not going to let this get to me. I'm not going to do it. Anyways, that just made me laugh because I'm like,
Yeah,
yes, it is so true. And
I
I've,
hear
okay,
you.
so my question for you though is like, where does it come from though? Because it is other women who are creating this environment for us that we then have to feel guilty for not fitting into.
Yeah, yeah, it's such a great point. In the book, I call it the promise of the thin and perfect, like this contractual agreement that we make. And it's all these outside forces, like someone deciding, oh, what more can we do for our teenage football players? I hear you. I had two sons that played football too. And I know what it's like to be part of communities where there's a variety of different mothers that have different levels of privilege and time on their hands. And it can be rough, right? Yeah, it can be really rough to the point someone set the pace and then basically asked everybody else to get on board.
Yep.
Um,
And then if you don't, there's something wrong with you. That's what you feel, that's the message that you get. And but so if I could go back, my youngest is now 16, so my
mhm.
oldest is 20. If I could go back to those earlier years of my parenting, though, I would tell myself, like, put your foot down like that back then. Like when all
Right.
those things were, they asked for you to volunteer at the book fair and they want you to, like you said, bring treats for every stupid party that was going on in school. I was like,
That's right.
I always was like, I don't understand how other women have time for this. But I also was at very in on a professional path where it was like, I have stuff to do during the day. Like, I can't do this.
I know.
Anyways, but I would go back and I would say one of the things I learned, like, as my kids got older was like, oh, you can buy these things. Like, I can buy cookies. I can send them with somebody else. I can drop them off the day before. There are ways to get around it that you don't have to, like you said, be baking home baked cookies at 10 o'clock at night and sacrificing your sleep to be able to get it done. You don't have to do that.
That's right. Whenever those sign up geniuses went around, I would jump on so quick and be like, I'm just doing water. I am going to the
Yes.
grocery store, getting water and dropping water off. That's that, or paper products. I'm
Yep.
not going to do
Yep.
anything more than that. And I think that's where perfection can look and feel so different for everybody. Like if I'm not a real churchgoer, like I'm spiritual, but I'm not over religious. Maybe for some women though, that could be really important to them. And that could be a part, they could get caught up in what perfection means from that lens. I used to race triathlons, and there can be, and I owned a yoga studio for a while. There is a definite expectation of what like a perfect yogi looks and feels like, or looks and acts like. I
Mhm.
remember I was at a retreat and we were leaving, and one of my mentors were like in the airport, and I look over, her name's Claire, and she was drinking a Diet Coke. Now I drink Diet Coke now. I haven't really, there was years I didn't really drink it, but I was like, oh, Claire is drinking Diet Coke? What? And it was like scandalous in my brain without me checking it, because I thought we're yogis, we're just putting really clean things in our bodies and we're just drinking water and tea. And I was all caught up in that perfection version of what it was to be a yogi. And oh my gosh, Kelly, it can get us at every turn. It really can. And
Yeah.
we absorb media images, media conversations. A lot of it is a reaction to maybe what we did or didn't have at some point. It's definitely
Mhm.
shaped for us. And that's where I think the body image comes from. Like a big component is the media image. Pieces that we're talking about is a lot of cultural expectations about what middle class, what it means to be a middle class or upper class good mom. Really?
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, the body image thing though is so hard. I struggle with that all the time where I'm like, okay, just don't worry about it. Who cares if you go up a pant size? Who cares if are heavier than you were last year? And then I go back to like just I don't know. There's just something about it where I'm like, oh, but I can't. Like I have and I tried all the things like intermittent fasting and try this diet, whatever. And I try to just like focus on being healthy. But it's hard. It is a really hard thing to get for a woman to get your head out of that. And I'm jealous when I see other women who I know are just, or I shouldn't say I know, seem like they just don't care. I'm like, I wish I had that in me, but then I don't know that they don't care. They may care and you just don't know. They just maybe struggle with it more or whatever, but it's hard. It is so hard.
Oh, it is. It really is. And because body image as a result of how a body looks gets so tied up with all the other things that are really important, like our health and the habits
Right.
that we take on, right? Even something simple around hydration and water, or how many green vegetables we're eating in a given day, or how much movement we have. All of those things contribute to our well being. And it can get caught up in a weight loss conversation so easily where it's hard to peel those things apart and be able to say, wait, what, why am I doing this? Am I doing this because I'm looking to whatever, drop 5 or 10 pounds? Or am I tuning into these habits that really impact my energy level and how I feel and how clear my mind is? And
Mm.
this is where diet culture and wellness culture just collapses those things. And it takes a lot of discernment for each individual to sort out what really is important to them and what kind of effort they want to put into some
Right.
of these choices.
Yeah. Yeah. One thought I've had in talking with you is that you are not a typical accountant.
Ah, no, I left it. I left the accounting profession and wrote these two books and did a lot of personal coaching. And then I've since come back in a different capacity. So
Okay.
I'm back as a part-time CFO, but also
Okay.
as an executive and strategy consultant.
Okay.
And so what I'm doing now is really helping organizations and leaders look. I now can see things at like a much more holistic approach, like a holistic view. And yeah, but I have all that accounting in my back pocket. It's just not, I don't really get involved in the details of the ins and outs of all those things, but work with people and companies at a higher level.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. So the accounting firm that I worked at as the marketing director, it was a virtual CFO firm. So we provided virtual CFO services. Yeah. So
Yeah,
when you say part-time CFO, are you a fractional CFO or just
yes,
part-time for one company? Okay. So you do fractional services.
that's right.
Very cool. Yeah. So you have definitely, I don't know, you're not the stereotypical accountant in that way that you have been entrepreneurial, started your own businesses, wrote these books, like you have a creative side to you. And the overlying message around all the stuff that you're doing is don't put yourself in a box and to pursue the things that you want to pursue and not the things that you feel like you have to, or do the things that you enjoy and not the things that you feel like you have to. So anyways, I love all of that. So I want to ask you too, you have another book and we'll just mention it really quick. So you have your other book that I think was your first book, right? Was Hungry,
Mhm.
Trust Your Body and Free Your Mind Around Food. What's the kind of the difference in the two books as far as the approach that you took or like the message that you have to share?
Yeah, I started dieting when I was 12. And then when I started sharing those stories with people, I heard so many, oh, me too, so didn't I. And really, wow, I did the Weight Watchers thing or the Atkins thing or all those Jenny Craig or what have you. And
Yeah.
I would hear all these stories from women in particular around their struggles with food. And I think because of my own journey in my relationship with food, I realized the components that made the struggle really challenging, which is, following rules of a diet and feeling like a failure when you can't follow them, restricting your body so much that the natural food drive like just will kick in and say, oh no, we're not having this. What happens when there's guilt and shame around our food choices, like all of these things that no one really said, by the way, this is why you're probably overeating, and this is probably why food has such a hold on you. And this is why, and at the heart of it, I realized for me personally how disconnected I was with my body and not honoring the signals it had to share, not honoring the really basic single signals, fullness signals, even tuning into how I was feeling emotionally and what I needed. And so the book is really, it's part my stories and then part just saying, what if you were to do it this different way? Which is start by really connecting in with yourself and see what emerges in your relationship with food when that's the starting point.
Both of your books sound like very powerful for women of all ages and phases of life. It sounds
Thank
because
you.
like you said, we do start thinking of those things, worrying about those things at a very young age, and it never goes away. So,
Yeah. Yeah, certainly. Hopefully it can and will, but it's just, I think we can't be free of it until we really call out and understand the power of diet culture
yeah,
and dismantling that within us. And it's just, and you really can't do it unless you just really discover and appreciate yourself and get to know each our bodies.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Tara, for coming on and sharing
Mm.
your books with us both, but Truly Seen. I will link to that in the show notes. Is there any other way that listeners can learn more about what you're doing or get in touch with you?
Yeah, thank you, Kelly. The best where I'm hanging out the most right now is LinkedIn. I go to Instagram for cat videos, and besides that, I really am trying to limit. But connecting with me on LinkedIn is really the best way. And then, of course, my email address, tara@whitebirchadvisory.com.
Great. Thank you so much. And yeah, we will share all of that in the show notes. So thanks for coming on, Tara.
Thanks, Kelly.
Looking for a community of women writers to support and inspire you on your journey? Join the Author Power Circle. Connect weekly with fellow authors, stay accountable, and move your book forward in an encouraging community. Learn more at kellyschuknecht.com